We have more breaking news at this hour. In fact, Governor Gavin Newsom posted just a short time ago. President Trump is sending hundreds of California National Guard to Oregon, and he is ready to fight it. MSNBC Pentagon correspondent Priya Sridhar, who is standing by for us at the Norfolk Naval Station, where the president is attending a ship ceremony for the 250th anniversary of the Navy. You're joining us now to talk about this. So first, let's talk about what Trump spoke about earlier relative to Portland, Priya. What did he say, and what more do we know about that deployment?
Yeah, that's right, Alex. Well, we know that the Trump administration has already appealed that federal judge in Oregon's decision to essentially halt the deployment of 200 Oregon National Guardsmen for a period of 14 days to the Ninth Circuit Court. We also know, as you mentioned, that according to Governor Newsom, the Trump administration has actually decided to federalize 300 California National Guardsmen and send them to Oregon. I'm going to read the tweet that he just posted online. He said, after a federal court blocked his attempt to federalize the Oregon National Guard, Donald Trump is deploying 300 California National Guard personnel into Oregon. They are on their way there now. We're taking this fight back to court. The public cannot stay silent in the face of such reckless and authoritarian conduct by the president of the United States. And the president did address that Portland judge's decision at the recent gaggle on the South Lawn, saying that this is a judge that he appointed himself and that they should be ashamed of their decision. Take a listen to a little bit more about what he had to say about what's going on in Portland.
Portland is burning to the ground. It's insurrectionists all over the place. It's Antifa. And yet the politicians who are petrified. Look, the politicians are afraid for their lives. That's the only reason that they say, like, there's nothing happening. And you've seen it. The place is burning down, and they pretend like there's nothing happening.
The approach has been aborted.
Now, just last week, President Trump and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, addressed a host of senior military leaders who flew in from all over the world to Marine Corps base Quantico. And there, President Trump said that the United States military should use dangerous American cities as a training ground. And that's exactly what he's doing with these different National Guard deployments in places like Memphis, Portland, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles. He claims that he was able to clean up the crime in Washington, D.C. in a matter of 12 days, and that's what he's hoping to do in these other cities, too. As far as what exactly those 300 National Guardsmen from California are actually going to do, that remains unknown. We know that over in Memphis, they're not armed, they're not allowed to make any arrests, and there won't be any tanks rolling down the streets. So all of that remains to be seen, and it'll be interesting to see if President Trump talks about any of that as he makes his way to the stage behind me here. And we're also expecting to hear remarks from the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who, of course, also delivered those 10 new directives from the Department of War addressing everything from fitness standards to grooming standards, really things that are going to impact people here on the ground in Norfolk. And, of course, all of this comes on the backdrop of the government shutdown. The sailors here, the active duty troops who are stationed here in Norfolk, are continuing to work, by the way, Alex, as you know, without pay.
Yeah.
Alex?